Hi everybody, it's Michelle here from Soloing Canada, Musings from Midlife, and I'm here to talk to you today about winter wellness in Canada. And I think this topic is quite fitting given that we had a couple of days of a pretty major snowfall here in Ontario. We got about 60 centimeters of snow dumped onto us in 48 hours. And we weren't really working ourselves up to it. Usually we work ourselves up to that kind of a snowfall, which is still kind of rare to have that much. 40, yeah, not 60, at least in my neck of the woods. But that's usually in January or February. Doesn't usually happen second snowfall of the year in late November. So yeah, that's why I thought I'd talk to you about today. And might have to turn the camera on and off because we only have a very small trench that we're all walking on this trail, so I don't want to get other people in the shot, so I might have to stop quite often. So I can already see a couple of people coming towards me, so bear with me on this. So one of the things that you need to do, this might be helpful for newcomers to Canada who are coming here from a warmer climate, is you need to build up your muscles, your winter muscles, because they really are different muscles than we use in good weather. So even just something simple like walking on a trail, it's very slippery, it's very uneven surface. It takes a lot more muscle power to, propel yourself through trails that haven't been walked on a lot. And so you're going to be slowly, at the beginning of the winter, building up those winter muscles. And you definitely want to make sure that you have a stronger core, or else you're going to be on the ground a lot, because you quite often do have to recover your balance because of the slippery surfaces. And to be, kind of taking care of your muscles and your joints at this age. You see a lot of newcomers coming to Canada and then just trying to function within the winter with their really inappropriate footwear. They're wearing, summer type shoes. They're just not going to have the proper treads to be able to navigate the ground with all the snow and the ice. You've got to think sensibly about what your needs are going to be in this type of weather. And, it's not just a matter of discomfort. It's a matter of safety in terms of not pulling ligaments and muscles and getting tears, etc. And then the other thing in terms of safety is it actually can become quite serious if you aren't dressed properly for the weather pretty quickly when it comes to exposing the skin in really cold temperatures. And a lot of the times people run into trouble because something unexpected has come up and they weren't anticipating being out in the, harsh elements. So I see this quite frequently, actually, where people get into the car and they aren't dressed to be out exposed in the weather, but they're not worried because their plan is just to be in the car and just to go from one indoor environment to another. But Canadians know that you can go off the road and whiteout conditions can suddenly come up. Snow squalls can dump a significant amount of snow very quickly. Snow squalls are hard to predict where exactly the snow is going to get dropped, and roads can get closed. And I've seen it numerous times over the years where highways or concession roads have been closed and people are trapped. The snow is falling deeper. They don't have a way to get out, and they don't even have a proper coat in the car. So it's really important. If you don't want to wear your winter gear, that's fine. Don't wear it. Well, I think better get back in the forest where the wind is calmer, or there'll be mic issues. But you don't have to wear the winter gear if you don't want to. But always ask yourself a sensible question. If you go off the road or if you end up trapped in your car for 18 hours, do you have something that's going to keep you warm? And don't rely on the car engine running, because eventually you're going to run out of gas or some other, problem with the car. So make sure that, you can just have a little bag, a winter bag in your car that has a blanket, a safety blanket, and has, a candle, because even just lighting a candle in a car in the winter with a little bit of oxygen source can create a little bit of warmth. Make sure you have waterproof matches for that. Make sure you have gloves, a hat, scarf, and winter boots. You might have to get out of your car and you might have to walk somewhere. Or even just last year, the highway got closed and a lot of people were trapped just outside of Aurelia for a long time in their cars. And eventually, each car's passengers were rescued by the OPP, who came on snowmobiles to get them. But, they had to get on the back of the snowmobile and get driven into town. And if you're not wearing proper winter gear for that, not only are you going to be freezing, you're going to be soaked. So you need to think about all of these things when you're living in Canada, even though you might never come upon them. It could be a matter of life or death without trying to sound dramatic. And then on top of that, just in terms of your clothing supply at home, you want to make sure that you have backup of everything. So have a backup winter coat, backup snow pants, because like this morning, I was out with my winter walking group. It was snowing for the first half of the hour, but then the snow turned to rain. So the second half of our walk, we were in the rain. By the time I got home, my toque and my coat were soaking wet, which was fine. I hung them up for the afternoon to dry. But if I had needed to go out again and I was going to be outside, I wouldn't want to be donning wet clothing, because that's not good for you either, to be putting on winter wet clothing to be out in the elements. So, just having a backup, and you can pick that backup at a secondhand shop. Doesn't have to be, the same expense that you would put into your winter clothing that you normally would wear, but just having that backup. So other than getting appropriate equipment for winter, the other thing you could be, and also preparing your muscles, I like to get back to that in terms of snow shoveling. So I'm pretty sore today. I don't have a snowblower because I don't have a garage to keep the snowblower in. So it's just up to me to do my shoveling of my driveway. And, not only did I have 60 centimeters of snow, but it was probably more like 45 when I went out there. And then the next day, another 10 or 15. But, I work out at the gym all the time. Like, I've been exercising regularly, and I'm not terribly unfit, so I'm somewhere in the middle. And even that, it took me most of the day on and off with rest periods in between, just simply given my age, the fact that I do have, some ailments to work around. I was on and off shoveling all day long. And even with my fitness level, the next day, I was so sore. I was sore everywhere, on my traps, and my lower back, sore in my glutes and my thighs. My wrists were sore. My forearms were sore. Everything was sore from doing all of that snow shoveling. And met a younger friend for breakfast. She too lives on her own and was doing all her own snow shoveling. And same thing, she got out of the car and walked over to meet me first thing out of her mouth was, "I am so sore." And, fortunately, because we were fit, sore was our only problem. The next day I thought it was going to be pretty bad, but I did some stretching afterwards, had a hot bath, got up in the morning. I could see I had more shoveling to do, but I did some stretching first. And, all I am is sore. But if I hadn't been fit, if I hadn't been going to the gym all the time, I might not be sore. I might be injured. And then how am I going to shovel in the next snowfall if I've hurt my back? And then the other thing is, every year after snowfalls, there are heart attacks. People end up in the ER because they had a heart attack because of all of the strain they put on their heart shoveling for people who aren't fit and aren't used to lifting that load. So it's really important in terms of preparing as a solo to make sure that you are fit enough to manage the demands that might be put on you if you're a homeowner. And also just think carefully about the winter situations you're putting yourself in and make sure that you're always thinking about your own safety and wellness. And don't forget to like and subscribe, please, if you're enjoying my videos. I appreciate that. Another thing to think about in terms of winter wellness is your mental health, because the days are shorter and they're colder, and we don't get enough exposure to sunlight, and we don't get enough vitamin D. So it's really important that you keep an eye on your mood and make sure that you're not starting to, feel really down. And there's ways that you can deal with that. First of all, you could be taking vitamin D supplements, which check with your doctor first, of course. I'm not your personal doctor. I don't know your personal situation, but for most Canadians, it's highly recommended that we're taking vitamin D capsules every day because we just don't get enough exposure to vitamin D from the sun. So make sure you're doing that if that works for you. The next thing that you can be doing to make sure that your mental health is good is get out and get some activity every day. Get some exposure to fresh air. Get out and get some movement. Even if it's not outside, you could be getting some movement indoors at a mall or at a community center. Another suggestion is to develop some structure to your days, Put in some things that are scheduled throughout the week or routines that you have. So creating a schedule for yourself so that you have a routine that you fall into just naturally every single day will really help with that feeling of every day seeming day in and day out to be kind of nothing if you don't have a lot going on in the winter months, or if you need to stay indoors a lot because of the weather. And so, I have a morning routine myself, and I really love living by my routine. It really, it makes me feel good. So, I just wake up when I wake up, but I'm an early riser, so normally I would wake up early. And I usually like to spend about an hour and a half reading, and I will do that sitting on the floor on my yoga mat so that I'm stretching out my back and my hips and, just doing some movement while I'm having, a couple cups of tea, and then I'll have my breakfast. Everything's really leisurely and relaxed, but I feel good. And then I head out, and I usually head out to do some kind of physical activity for the next hour and a half. But oftentimes after that, I will head somewhere, out in public where I know that I can be in a bright space talking to people. Or, I used to go to the public library because they had one of those, forget what they're called, but they're the lamps that give you the bright light in exchange for sunlight. And so I would get a newspaper and sit right by one of those lamps and read for 20 minutes just to get my exposure to that bright light. I also bought one, so you can get them off of Amazon. I have one of those lights. I guess they're called SAD lights, seasonal affective disorder, SAD. And I bought it off Amazon. It didn't cost that much money. And I would put that right beside me while I was working on my laptop and get exposure that way. And then the other thing that you can be doing is, maybe setting up more social interactions formally with friends and just to meet and have a hot beverage. You can meet at a coffee shop on a regular basis. Set up those meetings that are only they don't only have to last an hour. They don't have to take up half your day. But having a place to be and having some social action really helps with your it helps with your mental health too over the long months. And then another way to counteract, that feeling of winter blues or just being kind of, feeling positive and upbeat and motivated is just getting involved in lots of warm kind of comfy food. So you might have more pasta in the winter, you might have more soups and heavier soups too, you might have more stews, those kinds of cooking. Or just I love putting something in the slow cooker and then it sits in the crock pot all day long, and then when I come in the afternoon after being outside, the whole house smells like this warm, hot, tasty stew. I love the smell of it, or of a roast cooking in the crock pot. So, thinking of those types of, winter associated foods that can brighten your mood and, bring back warm memories too of all the years past in Canadian winters. I think that's helpful as well. And then in terms of your food as well, maybe now's the time in the winter to take some sort of a cooking course. You can take those at sometimes the grocery stores offer those, sometimes your city community centers, or maybe just take one online, but maybe sign up for some kind of a winter cooking course that you can experiment with your cooking over the winter months. And then the other thing is, embrace the Canadian winters too. You can go out for those skating afternoons at the outdoor rink, or, show up to the city hall events that are being run outdoors on the sunny days, or, take up a winter sport, or just simply if you're not into winter sports, just getting out on those warmer weather days when the sun's out and the wind's down and getting out for a nice forest walk. But it just embracing the activities that a lot of Canadians build into their life, really, because we have so many months with snow in Canada. And really, if you don't embrace the winter, even to a small degree, and you truly are just sitting around waiting for winter to end, you're actually giving away a half of your year, 5 months of the year, you're giving it away and just putting yourself on hold. So, really trying to develop a positive attitude toward the Canadian winters. And then the other thing that you could be doing is you could be signing up for something that takes you into a different space that you're not normally taken into, even if it's just a one shot deal or 2 weeks in a row and that's it. I was out for a walk this morning with a friend who was telling me that our local arts center has weekly lunch and learns where an artist will volunteer their time and will present their work and talk all about their work, medium that they're using, the tools they're using, the style of art they're working with, and kind of the motivations and the reasoning behind some of their works of art. And you can just get out and enjoy that once a week, or showing up for any of the community social clubs guest speakers when opportunities are presented. So just doing those kinds of things. Or you can decide that over the winter you're going to learn a particular skill that you don't have yet, like maybe you're going to learn a new language, or you're going to take a woodworking class, or learn to become learn car maintenance or something. Just, it can be short term, it can only be 2 months long. Some people, if they're adults and they never learn to swim, that happens a lot with newcomers to Canada, many other countries where it's not built into the culture, where their children are taught to swim early on. They might want to take a learn to swim course once a week at the local community center over the winter. So there's lots of kind of new things that you could put into your schedule that wouldn't be in your schedule all year long, but that you can do over the winter. It will make the winter go by faster and bring you, kind of some lightheartedness and something that you're looking forward to. And then the other thing you can do is you can kind of create a cozy nook within your house. So, since the house, the lighting is darker and, it's, I mean, I like it because I don't have to go to work. So I love the fact that it's really dark in the mornings because it's so, easy to sleep a little longer and you just feel so well rested when you wake up. But the house does become dimly lit by about 3:30 in the afternoon. And then, of course, it's dark by 4:30 in December and January. So, work with that, right? Instead of trying to make your house nice and bright and light, instead work with the dimness of the light and make it cozy and have some warm lighting and put out some extra blankets just for decoration in the living room or sitting draped over chairs and couches that you can snuggle under when you're sitting reading or watching TV. And then, of course, in the bedroom, get yourself a really nice beautiful wool blanket that you love, or an extra winter quilt that you pull out every winter and that you really love the look of it and the feel of it, so that at by this time of the year it's time to pull that out of the linen closet and drape it on your bed. Maybe you switch out some of the pillows that so that they're bigger and easier to snuggle into and prop up so that you can stay in bed longer and do some reading in bed or whatever. But just kind of work with that coziness, since the dim light is there longer. And then for me, what I do is, because I spend more time in the house in the winter and my house is really small, because I spend so much time in there, it can start to look really cluttered because I'm doing a lot of things just within that same small space. So I have to have a little bit of discipline and this kind of rule that everything I take out, I sort of put away when I'm doing, certain things, just so that the house doesn't get just a little overly lived in and looking just a little like too messy and creating a little bit of stress on me because of that. So, I build in a little bit more rules to myself that, this needs to go back at the end of the day. That I might not do any other season, but I'm doing it in the winter because simply I'm just spending so much time in the house. And then there's some things that you need to think about too, when you're making plans with people, that you have to just keep some flexibility in mind, that even though you made plans to do things with people to travel out of town, just realize that there might be times that has to be, weather permitting, because you don't want to be risking your life or putting pressure on other people to risk their life to come despite all weather conditions, come and honor that commitment made to do whatever it is you plan to do. So you just have to roll with the punches a little bit, in terms of dealing with our winter weather, and realize that through the worst of the winter, that some of these plans that you've set up, they might need to be just a little flexible and you might need to rearrange or rebook if the weather doesn't look so good. But one way or the other, although there's challenges with living in a cold climate, it can still be awesome. And you really just need a different mindset. You need a positive attitude and flexibility. And you need to look at what are the conditions and features of, the conditions, and then see, how can I work with that instead of working against it. But I hope you love your winters. I don't love winter myself. I don't love the cold, and I'm not, a winter sports enthusiast, but I still love the beauty of the Canadian winter. And even though it was a hassle to be shoveling all yesterday and, feeling all the aches and pains, I still loved seeing all the wildlife coming out to my bird feeder because I couldn't source the food they needed in any other place. So there was, it was a really busy place at my bird feeder between the birds and the squirrels and then the bunnies. It was a busy place to be. And I enjoyed watching all of the little critters, and I just loved the look of the snow in the forest, all the big heavy clumps of snow on the evergreen trees in my backyard. It is quite beautiful. This morning when I got up, there were these long, 12 to 16-inch long icicles all hanging off of the roof of my house. And, that was an interesting look too. I took some pictures of that. But I mean, it's hopefully short-lived. By the beginning of this week, the sun will be out. There will be less snow. Some of it will melt. There won't always be snow on the ground. So just roll with it and make the best of it. And if anybody is a newcomer to Canada this year and you are coming from a cold climate, invest the money, get some really good quality clothing to keep you warm. And that's when you will be able to enjoy the being outside, because if you're not comfortable, you'll just hate it. So even though it might seem like a big expense, it's worth it to get really good boots, a really good coat, nice, warm hat, mitts, and a scarf. And then, enjoy it as much as you can. Remember, if you're sending children to school or grandchildren to school, that in our Canadian schools, the kids go outside. If it's warmer than minus 27 degrees Celsius with wind chills, that they will be expected to go outside. So don't send your kids to school not properly dressed, thinking, oh, they wouldn't possibly send them outside, because they will. And so, keep that in mind too. Welcome to Canada. I hope you do enjoy our Canadian winters. And that's all I have to say on that today. A friend of mine decided last year that she was spending too much time indoors because she works remotely from home and because she's not really a huge winter enthusiast. So what she decided to do was that she started a winter walking group. And so she sent out an email to about 12 people she knew, inviting anyone who was interested to meet once a week at a particular time and location, that we would show up and meet for a walk together. And it's just like this standing invitation, and she just asks that you let her know if you are planning to come, so we know who we're waiting for, so that as a courtesy, we aren't standing waiting in the freezing cold for people who aren't planning to come that week. So we just send her a quick text or an email saying, yes, I plan to be there tomorrow. And we walk every week. Now this year we've had to cancel the first 3 of the winter season. We canceled because of weather, but we were able to get out today. And like I say, it snowed for the first half and rained for the second. But that might be an idea too, that if you're trying to look for what could you do to get yourself out there in a little fresh air, is start up a little winter walking group. I also have a friend, she and her husband decided that they would show up for the open skate at their local community center. They go twice a week, 2 afternoons a week. So they went out and they got themselves new skates. They hadn't skated in 30 years. And, they go out twice a week and they love it now. And, that's an indoor rink. But once the outdoor rinks get set, they can start showing up at their city's outdoor rink too. And that will be lots of fun. And, if you really don't want to do any sport activities, then just show up at the rink anyways, even though you're not skating, and buy yourself a hot chocolate and listen to the music and watch everybody else skate. And one more thing I'd like to add, if you are driving on our roads, you need snow tires. The ads will tell you that their all-season radials are good for all year, but they truly aren't. And it is so clear in the city I live who has winter tires and who doesn't. And all the people who don't have winter tires are creating a huge backlog because their car can't get up the smallest little incline, especially if it's at an intersection where they need to make a right turn and there's a little incline. And they can be there for 20 minutes and everybody is backed up behind them. So many people in ditches and, fender benders for, that happens even with people with snow tires. You can't control that. But, the people who aren't driving with snow tires, they're putting themselves and others at risk. And I know that the insurance companies are talking about, not covering people who are in accidents in the winter and do not have proof that they have snow tires on their car. I don't know if that's gone into effect yet, but they've certainly discussed it. So if you're new to Canada and you've been told by someone you don't need snow tires, unless you're living in downtown Toronto or, over in Vancouver, you need snow tires. So this is Michelle at Solo in Canada. I hope you enjoyed the video today. It was just talking about winter wellness, and hope you get yourself out there and do something fun. Share in the comments if you found something fun to do throughout the winter months to make it something that you look forward to. And we'll talk soon.